Scheduling. Okay, as I have told you that I have to execute multiple processes at a time. So which process will take the CPU first and which process will take the CPU for how much time? This is basically again the concept of the scheduling act of determining which process in the ready state should be moved to the running state. Again, these are basically the states for the process that has to be executed. It must have come to the ready queue, and the ready queue again, in the ready queue I have the ready state in which my process is ready to execute, so it's just waiting for its turn. So after moving from RAM to the CPU, that is basically in that it basically it means my process has been moved from RAM to the CPU. The prime aim of the process scheduling system is to deliver minimum response time for all programs and make the system efficient, fast, and fair. So, as I have many processes for execution, so it's the responsibility of again the CPU. So all the process will wait for minimum time, so their execution will be fast, efficient, and fair. Scheduling allow multiple users to share system resources effectively, so resources will be shared fairly. Each process will get the resource according to its need, and effectively their task and execution will be accomplished. Scheduler figure out which program to give control to the next. Basically this is the duty of the obviously this is the duty. Scheduling is basically the function of the operating system. Again, scheduler has the duty to figure out which program will be executed next, so which program to give control to the next. Again, this is the again another technique that is basically preemptive and non-preemptive scheduling. Again, what is the preemptive is basically you can say the thing that has to be preempt or has to be taken from one process to the other process. The process with the highest priority should always be the one currently using the resources. That is again the concept of the interrupt, basically your context switching. If there is a high priority task arrived, I have to take the CPU from one process to another process. Resources are only allocated for limited time and the process can be interrupted in between. Again, if the high priority task or high priority process has arrived, I have to take the CPU from that process, from the currently running process to the high priority process, and that basically is done. Again, the interrupt will be generated. It's basically depends on whether it's the hardware interrupt or a software interrupt. Scattering which take place when a process switch from running state to the ready state or vice versa. Again, as I have told you that every process that has to be executed will come to the ready state, ready in the ready queue. Again, there is the ready state in which process are waiting for its turn. And basically, ready state is relevant to the memory, that is the RAM, when when where the process waits for its turn to get the CPU and do its execution. So from ready state to the running state, our process will go for execution. Any program that is running, that is running state, basically it's get the CPU for its execution. Again, scheduling which take place when a process switch, scheduling is done where the process switches from running state to the ready state or vice versa. Again, whether the process is executing, then it's the running state. Whether it's waiting for the CPU, then it will be in the ready state. The other, in the contrast of preemptive, there is a non-preemptive scheduling. A process runs to completion when scheduled. Non-preemptive scheduling, basically a process that runs to completion when scheduled. So if there is any high priority task arrived somehow, so it will not take the CPU, it will not take the processor from the currently running process. Basically, the currently running process will execute first, do its completion, then the processor will be released by that process. Once resources are allocated to a process, the process holds it till it's complete its time. As I've told you that the currently running process will do its execution first, then the other process will get the processor. The scheduling which take place when a process terminates or switch from running to the waiting state. Again, there are different state. As I've told you, there is the state of new, there is a state of ready, that is basically relevant to the RAM. There is a state for running, that is the state where the processes will get the CPU and execution is done in that, in the running state. And then we have the terminate state. After the execution of the process, the CPU terminate the process. Then we have the other state, that is the waiting state, in which the process will wait due to some any reason, that the process is waiting from for some input device, or that way it's waiting for some output device. Okay. So the scheduling which take place when a process terminates or switch from running to the waiting state. It will go to the waiting state according to the requirement if the process needed. Then we have concurrent process. As I've told you that the at a time parallelly there are different process that can be executed. So computing model in multiple process executing during the same period of time. For example, currently I'm using MS PowerPoint. Currently I'm using the Zoom's meeting. So I'm using two processes concurrently, means at the same time I'm using the two processes. Then what are the basically advantages of the concurrent processes? Basically, as from the general perspective, we can see that the multiple tasks are executed concurrently. Our jobs are doing, basically this is the not time consuming. Our jobs, two of the tasks are completed at a time, so time will not get wasted. What are the advantages of the concurrent processes? Basically, it increase the program throughput. Basically, throughput in operating system is measure how many processes are completed per unit time. Okay. It basically, as we can say that concurrently there are different processes that are currently being executed. So it will increase the throughput, and the throughput is basically is the measure of how many processes are completed per unit time. Higher responsiveness for input and output, and again more appropriate program structure. Basically, this is the shared resources. Again, there, as you can say that this is the process one that is actually shared the is sharing the resource. This is the process two that is exactly sharing the same resource. The process three is also exactly sharing the same resource. Then I have another concept, that is IPC. Basically, IPC stands for inter-process communication. So as its name shows that the process basically doing the communication, as if there are different processes that are executing, so communication can be done between the processes, between these processes, whether they are on the network or are not on the network. Again, mechanism that allow the exchange of data between processes. Data can be exchanged between the processes. What are the advantages of IPC? Basically, it helps the programmer organize the activities among different processes. So activities can be managed, can be organized, allow one application to control another application, thereby enabling data sharing without interface. Facilitates the efficient message transfer between processes. And there are different strategies for the IPC, because it can be done by the message passing, or it can be done by the shared memory. So it will facilitate the efficient message transfer between processes, enables data communication by allowing to share memory and information. This is basically again the structure of IPC. This is the basically IPC mechanism. As I've told you that there are different mechanism, that basically it can be done by the message passing, it can be done by the shared memory. So that let's suppose if process A wants to communicate with the process B, or they want to share the data, so this is the IPC mechanism that is used by the both processes. Again, the same, there is the mechanism that is used by the process B and process C for exchanging data. Same, there is another IPC mechanism for sharing data between process B and process D. Then there's in the responsibility, that is the hardware initialization. All processors based boards need testing to confirm the correctness of hardware design and proper functioning of various peripheral. Again, peripheral is for input or output devices. If I want to confirm the correctness, I want to check whether my hardware devices are working accurately or not, but functioning properly or not. Basically, this is also needs to be tested. So after testing, it will confirm the correctness of hardware design or proper functioning. It is processor used to check the proper functioning of all the hardware components in a system. Basically, it's the uh, duty that is done during the booting process. As you guys may check that there are during the booting process, if somehow if any one of my device is not working properly, the alert messages are also will also shown during the booting process that this specific device is not working properly, or this specific device is not connected correctly to the port, just like that, if somehow if my device is not working properly. So this is the duty of again operating system to check the functionality of the all the hardware components in the system. Then I have the bootloader. Again, this is the concept related to the booting, and booting is the process when we start. Booting is just like that, is just when you start the window. Okay, bootloader is a piece of a code that runs before any operating system is running. It is loaded by the, again we have discussed it, it is the loaded by the computer's BIOS ROM. What actually BIOS is? Okay, it is basically highly processor and board specific. Again, the bootloader performs the necessary initialization to prepare the system for the operating system. During the booting process, all of the devices will be checked whether they are working properly or not. So if it tells the computer what to do after the system is turned on. Again, there is a menu. We will see if we want to change something, or we want to change the setting, that can also be done during the booting process. There is the proper, you can say, the menu that will be open for the user.
Yeah,
Again,
after clicking, I think so. That the power on your computer, you just tap F12 or F11 or F1 or G, one of
yes,
these buttons, and then
yes,
the bio thing will open up.
yes, you are right. Okay. Then we have the scheduling criteria. As I've told you that scheduler will select which process will get executed next. So there is a criteria for scheduling. Basically, these are the five criterias that are CPU utilization, throughput, turnaround time, waiting time, or response time. CPU, okay, basically from for the, you can say, when we talk about the operating system, it's basically we want that CPU will keep busy. Okay, it will not sit idle. Basically, that actually what we want from the CPU. It will do its execution all the time. It will not get be idle. It will not go it will not go into the idle state. So CPU utilization mean keep the CPU as busy as possible. Okay, it means that I have to execute the process all the time. Okay, I have to keep the busy CPU all the time in doing some processing. Then I have the throughput. Basically, throughput is the number of processes that complete their execution per time unit. We have discussed in the previous slide. Then we have the turnaround time, amount of the time to execute a particular process. Basically, when it will come to the ready state, and when it complete its execution. Okay, when it before completing its execution, when it start its execution. Then we have the waiting time, amount of the time a process may wait in the ready queue. Okay, that basically I have told you that ready queue is relevant to the RAM, and in the ready queue where the processes are been waiting, have been waiting for their turn. Then I have the response time. Response time basically amount of the time it takes from a request that was submitted until the first response it produced, not output. Basically, as the first time the process will receive the CPU, will get the CPU, it doesn't mean that it will complete its execution at once. It may be high priority tasks will come, so their execution will be interrupted. Other process will get the CPU, other process will get the processor, so their execution will not get completed at once. So response time is the time when a request was submitted until its first response is produced, not the output. Again, the criteria we have discussed that it means we want the maximum CPU utilization, maximum throughput, minimum turnaround time, and we want minimum waiting time. So process will get wait for the minimum time, minimum response time. Basically, I have told you that there is the scheduling. Okay, that will select which process will get executed. So there must be some criteria, there must be something that will select which process will be executed first, though. So for this purpose there are different algorithms for executing which process will execute next. And these are the basically algorithms that are first come, first serve. Okay, first come, first serve, that can also be written as FCFS. Then the second algorithm is shortest job first, SJF. Then I have the priority scheduling, and then I have the round robin scheduling. Okay, let's check one by one. First come, first serve, as its name shows, any process that will come first in the ready queue will get the CPU first. So job are executed on first come, first serve basis, just like the queue. Okay, when the queue is maintained at the counter, the person who will at the start of the queue will be entertained first, will get its need service first. Easy to understand and implement, poor in performance as average waiting time is high. Okay, because if the high priority task will come first, it will have to be executed because it's non-preemptive. And if the high priority task is that will arrived first, it will do its execution complete and then release the CPU, then release the process, the other process will get the CPU. Then the other one is shortest remaining time. Shortest remaining time, you can say, is the preemptive approach. Okay, when any process with the shortest uh, bus time, shortest CPU time will arrived, then and at that time the CPU will be switched from the current process to the other process. Select the process for execution which has the smallest amount of time remaining until it completion. It mostly gives minimum average time. Then I have the shortest job first. It's again the non-preemptive approach, also known as shortest process next, or shortest job first, or SJF. Best approach to minimize waiting time. The shortest job is executing first. Preemptive shortest job, as I've told you that the if we will this one, the shortest remaining time, you can say, is the preemptive version of the shortest job first. This is basically what's written here. Preemptive shortest job is known as shortest remaining time first. Then I have the other scheduling algorithm, that is the round robin. Again, it can be written as RR double R. Very we can say very common base policy. So run each process for its time duration scheduling. The time quantum is fixed for each process. In it, there is the fair scheduling. Each process will get its time. Will each process will each process will get the CPU for a specific time. For example, if there is time quantum 2 selected, then uh, each process will get the CPU for the 2 second. Okay, then after each time slash duration, moving the running process to the back of the queue. Then I have the priority scheduling. As its name, basically priority scheduling can be done by the non-preemptive approach and the preemptive approach as well. There is a priority selected for each process. If the high priority task arrived, then the processor will be switched from the currently running process to the high priority process. Priority scheduling is a method of scheduling processes based on the priority. Processor with the high priorities are carried out first. Priority can be decided based on the memory requirements, time requirement, or any other resource requirement. Okay. Basically, this is the first come, first serve scheduling. As we have discussed, any process with the who will come first will be entertained first. Just like I have given you the example of the queue. When the queue is maintained, anyone at the start of the queue will get the will get the services. For example, if there is a queue that is maintained in the cafeteria, so anyone who will at the start of the queue will get the e-tables first, just like that. First come, first serve. This is basically just like the question, okay, in which we have the process, and each process has the process ID. Basically, it's represented just like that: P1, P2, and P3. Then we have other column, that is bus time. Okay, bus time means how much, for how long each process needs a CPU. For example, P1 needs a CPU for 24 seconds, P2 needs a CPU for 3 seconds, and P3 needs a CPU for 3 seconds. Suppose that the processes arrive in the order P1, P2, and P3. Let's suppose that the process has been arrived just like in the sequence that is written here. Like, for this purpose, For the CPU scheduling, if there is a question, then we will do two things. Okay, first I have to draw the Gantt chart. Okay, then I have to calculate the waiting time and for each process, and I also have to wait for the average waiting time. Okay, Gantt chart. For example, for Gantt chart, as I've told you that every process that will come first will be entertained first, just like the queue maintained. For example, for on the Gantt chart, I will show the time here. Okay, for the P1, it will execute for 24 seconds, as and we know that the Gantt chart start from the zero. Okay, 0 to 24 times 0 to 24 second, the CPU is reserved for the process 1. Okay, then after the process 1, there is another process that has been arrived, that is the process 2. Okay, that also needs the CPU for 3 seconds. So 24 plus 3, which is equal to the 27. 24 plus 3, which is the 27, and then we have another process that has been arrived, which is the 3 sorry, which is the process 3 of the burst time 3, sorry, which is the process P3 of the burst time 3. 27 plus 3, again this is the 30. So let's suppose that this is the all of the processes have been arrived at the arrival time 0. So waiting time for the process can be calculated in a simple way for this scenario when all of the processes has been arrived with the arrival time 0. P1 has to wait for 0 second, that this is shown on the Gantt chart. P2 has to wait for 24 second. Okay, P3 has to wait for 27 second. When we calculate the average waiting time, when we calculate the average waiting time, so for this we have to sum all of these and then divide by the number of the processes. Let's suppose 0 plus 24 plus 27 and divided by 3, which is equal to the 17. Again, this is the 17 second, 17 millisecond, 17 nanosecond. That is another unit that is not specified. As I've told you that if the high priority task, if the process with the high bus time, high CPU time will come first in the queue, it will be entertained first. So as you just notice the time here, the average waiting time, which is equal to the 17. But when we change the sequence of the processes, okay, just like that, if the shortest bus time will entertain first, then the largest bus time will be entertained at the last, then what will be the effect of the average waiting, what will it affect on the average waiting time? So we have to just same criteria that is given in the previous slide. We will just draw the Gantt chart. Okay, uh, uh, for example, the burst time for P2 is 3. Okay, Gantt chart, on the Gantt chart we will show it just like that. For P3 it will execute from 0 to 3. For P3 it will also have the burst time of 3. 3 plus 3, which is equal to the 6. And for P1 it will execute for the 24 second. Okay, and then 6 plus 24, which is equal to the 30. Basically it's the waiting time for each process individually. So waiting time for process 1 is 6. Waiting time for process 2 is 0. Waiting time for process 3 is 3. When we compute the average waiting time, then we'll come to know that it's basically 3. And in the previous slide, when we execute in the same sequence with the process 1 who has the largest bus time, the average waiting time is 17. So it's not a good approach, because if the process with the largest bus time will come first, so the other process will have to wait for long time, so it will affect the average waiting time. Basically, this is the criteria. This case is basically done or changed just to check the average waiting time. Okay, we have seen here that the average waiting time has been reduced to 3. Okay, much better than the previous case. Okay.